Since I was a little kid, I've been watching superhero movies, sci-fi movies, action movies, and one thing I noticed all of them kind of have in common are these really cool computer HUD UI elements. And I think they're really interesting and really amazing, designing the computers of the future. That's something really awesome. I actually remember, I think the first movie I can remember seeing with it was like Iron Man 1, and it has this heads-up display and his computer come on and starts talking, and all these different elements are moving. And that was just so cool for me to see. That all being said, now with today's technology, we can actually create that studio quality motion and animation with the tools that we have. And something really cool that I found out is a lot of studios use Illustrator, Cinema 4D, and After Effects to actually create these really amazing, intricate motion graphics. Be creating some UI elements, and we're going to start in Illustrator and then take that Illustrator design, because it's vector art, take it into After Effects, convert it to shape layers, and then start animating it, and then add further cool, interesting 3D elements from Cinema 4D into After Effects and composite this really interesting UI element design. And this is going to be a long video, of course, you probably see on the timeline, but it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be filled with a lot of information, and I'm going to be taking you through each step as if you don't understand how the program works. So if you've never used Cinema 4D, or you never used After Effects, you never used Illustrator, I'll be breaking it all down to every one of you, so no matter where you're coming from, you'll be able to create these cool elements and add them to your next film or your next motion reel. So let's get started, guys. Welcome to UI design part 1, I guess. Before we start, I just want to say a quick thanks to the Patreons. Because of their awesome support, I was able to get this really cool microphone and step up the quality for everyone. So thank you, Patreons, y'all rock. Thanks for the microphone from your funding, and if you want to consider joining the channel, go ahead. I'll be uploading the elements for this video to the Patreon, so if you're interested in the Illustrator files, the Cinema 4D files, the After Effects files, all of that will be on the Patreon on the All Access tier. So without beating around the bush, we'll jump into it.
Out of the past into 1,000 tomorrows comes a car made of the right stuff. The 1982 Toyota Celica, aerodynamically conceived to be efficient, not just different.
So you sketch through your ideas. You have the design, the motion, the layout, the utility, and the function of all your pieces, or at least you have an idea of how you want it to do. You can always change these later on down the line, especially when we get into After Effects. But most importantly, you kind of have the overall big picture, because now we're going to be bringing that big picture to life. So if you're new to Illustrator, don't worry, I am pretty new as well. It is an amazingly powerful program. I actually wanted to start in Photoshop, but now after using Illustrator, I decided to just stick with it and use it for most of my UI design. So let's go ahead and just punch create new. And this is very important. I already have my settings right here for the film that I'm working on, and if you have your film that you're working on, go ahead and put those there. If you don't know it, a 16:9 is usually pretty safe, but you definitely want to get that, because it is necessary for what we're about to do. We're about to get really precise here, so make sure you have the correct resolution, make sure you have the correct aspect ratio, and let's get started. So we'll just name this UI, and then I always like to label mine in version. So we'll name it UI test _1, or we can do UI test _v1. And this is kind of how a programmer would name things, which I like. I used to do some programming, and we'll just stick with that right there. And it just keeps your ideas organized, and you can have a clear path to trace back, especially if you liked ideas later down the line of the design process. Because there's going to be a bunch of iterations on this design, especially once you open up After Effects. You might find some of your motion ideas don't work out. So the first thing I like to do is I like to go to Window, and then View, and then just click down here, click Snap to Grid, then go to View again, click Show Grid. Then we want to go and we want to find Hide Alpha, and then that's going to be High Transparency Grid right there. There we go. So now we have this really nice layout, and you can see we have our bounding box of our film, which it's not exactly right on the grid, but that's okay. It's close enough for the purposes of what we're doing. And just to let you know, this is very important that you understand this. You can go and change this grid, and it's going to come in handy when you're trying to do some finer detail things. So if you go to, and that's going to be preferences, under preferences, let's go to guides and grids. Cool. And you can change your subdivisions to 8 if you want to get some really fine detail. And you can also just change your grid lines from every 72 pixels to every whatever. We're gonna see what 8 looks like. And there we go. So now we have a lot more finer detail. By the way, if your layout doesn't look like this, just click right here. You can kind of see the Essential. I'm on Essential Classic. I modified it a little bit. I think at least. This is how I like the layout. It's more close to Photoshop. It's a little bit more familiar, and I like that. So that's what we're using. So now that we've kind of just got all that laid out, you can just go over and we'll just start basic. So let's start off with there's a paint tool right here. You can see. Let's just go and undo that. There's also a line tool. So here we go. And if you punch shift, it will snap straight forward like that. And then you can punch shift again and get like a nice little X. You can change all things about this. You can change the fill. It's a line, so it's not going to have fill. You can change the stroke right here. If we just turn that up, you can see it's getting thicker, which comes in very useful. This is very procedural way to work, and I love that. It's because we're working with vector, which is basically saying that this is not actually a shape. It is a mathematical equation saying defining the slope of this line. It's at least how I understand it to be, which is really cool. So that means we can go back and change things, and I love that. The more I've been using these programs, the more I've been working with code again and kind of going back and changing things inside code because it makes it more procedural. And we'll talk about that in Photoshop, and if you're a Houdini user, you definitely know what I'm talking about here. Cool. So it all starts with an idea. And I'm just going to make some sketches for y'all so you can kind of see how this works. And you can also just sketch in here as well if you want. Let's do 4-point thickness. And we can see relative to the rest of our screen how that's going to look. Okay, I like that a lot. And sorry guys, I'm not naming my key commands. So if you want to copy this, let's just take it right here. Punch Alt. And it's not currently working out for me right now, but that's okay. There we go. So punching Alt, you got to grab in the right spot. You'll see these two little lines come up, and then you can kind of just copy them over. You can grab this one right here. Whoops, grabbed them all, and just go right there. And you can move it around by grabbing that center. There we go, and then we have this cool overlapping shape, so you can do that, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But now let's just talk about kind of the language of this design and how we want it to kind of turn out. Coming off of it, we can have some type of line. Kind of, these are going to serve as leading lines, pointing the audience's attention to the center, where we can have some text or something. So let's just take this out some. And this is a rough sketch inside of Illustrator. If you already have it like it clearly defined how you want it, then there's no need to do this. Just start designing what you want. And guys, you can tell it's really important to have this snap to grid, because if this gets off just a little bit, it's not going to feel and look right, and it's going to just be sloppy, especially when we start copying and cloning everything. So we have this cool idea, and let's just build upon it a little bit. First thing I'm going to do is just start building some assets up here that I can kind of pull from quickly and incorporate into the design. And what we're going to do is we're going to have this cube rectangle tool, and we're just going to do that right there. And let's change the fill just to show y'all. If you grab this right here, pick a color, punch OK, it's going to fill white, which is not the best example since we're working on a white background. We'll grab it again. Let's pick a red. Okay, cool. We filled it with red and we're stroking it with black. So let's grab the stroke right here and let's change the stroke to something like A3. and we'll go down to 2 point. Okay, it looks cool right there. And I actually don't want to use fills on this because I know when working inside of After Effects that we'll be able to kind of do this cool stroke effect with it, where it kind of traces the edge. So that's why I'm just gonna leave it like that. And once we get into After Effects, you'll kind of be able to better justify your design and your idea about everything, because you'll know a little bit more about how the animation process will go and what you can and can't do in After Effects. There's not much you can't do with the code, with coding parameters, but that is a little hard to do and can take a while, and it's not exactly the most fun thing to do if you're just wanting to like build beautiful shapes and stuff. So we won't be jumping too much into the code. I'll show you some quick expressions probably that you can just utilize. And yeah, okay. Oh yeah, and another tip is, let's say that you wanted to make some of these a circle. And I'm just zooming in by punching Alt, by the way, and then scrolling on my mouse. And then if you want to move just regular, don't punch any key, and you can move up and down. So Alt, zoom in and out, up and down, just like that. You can see by punching Alt and just grabbing it on this line right here, pulling it over, you can see we can copy it down, and then we can highlight them again, punch Alt. You can also just highlight them like this, punch Control C, Control V, they'll be right here, and then you just grab them and move them around. And we're getting this cool little structure right here, which is nice, something cool. And I'm actually going to go to the Layers Manager and kind of just take all these rectangles, create a new layer, and then drop them under there. And I really like working in the Layer Manager because I'm coming from Photoshop, but also because I can turn something on and off real quick and see what does it look like with it, what does it look like without. Because you can kind of picture these things, but I find that just seeing them in person and in real life is much more impactful for just design in general, because you get the full sense of weight and balance with no bias in your brain. That makes sense, doesn't it? So we're going to click Alt, move these up. That's really interesting. And just think about the principles of design and composition too when you're doing this, where we have these really cool looks. So part of why this looks nice is we have these leading lines going down and in, and also we have the symmetry right here. So that's pretty cool. Just think about this kind of stuff, and that kind of messes it up right there, so we can kind of see, oh, we don't want to do that. And let's see, we can play around a little bit, see if we get any inspiration. And it's really, guys, nothing here is your final product. You don't need to be so crazy careful and delicate with your artwork at this stage, because it really just is a sketch. And the more you treat it like that, the better results you'll get, because you'll find you can start creating some really cool stuff. Okay, that's interesting, but I'm not in love with the slanting, so we'll just go back to normal. Cool. And let's go ahead and just define what this function is going to be, because it's kind of in the process where we'll do that. So we'll just make a new layer, and we'll call this text. Cool. And I like this font, it's my favorite right here, Blender Pro. First off, I can remember the name because obviously Blender, the 3D program, and second off, it looks so UI. So let's go Blender Pro Heavy, and let's type something like 68.08, and then throw a little % back there. And if you're handing this off to an animator and they're going to do the animation, it's nice to kind of just throw in a number there so they know. You can just also do 0.00% or whatever the function of this is. Could be a $sign in front. And usually when we throw it in After Effects, we just recreate the text because it's easier, but in this case we're just putting it here so that we can see the full design language of our piece. And let's go up to 15 size. Put it right here. And okay, so see, you can see something is happening right here. And this is the fact that our grid snapping, it's great we have it on, but we're snapping to the left and the right, and we're not really getting this centered up because of how many characters we're using and the nature of the number. So let's go here to preferences, and then let's go to guides and grids again. And let's change this from 8 to, let's say, 7. Now, hopefully, we can kind of snap a little bit more in the middle. And still not perfect. So what we can do is we can go to text tool. Whoops. And just modify this text. And I'm kind of just freestyling here, putting a space right there. That looks pretty good. So this is not perfectly centered, but it looks okay for now. And remember, we will be redoing this text inside of After Effects. So don't freak out too much about this. This is a little bit of an issue, I will say. It's a little bit getting on my nerves, and that's fine. Looks good. And you just really, like I said, don't be precious with it, because we might not even have it in there in the end. Cool. So we have that loading right there, and it'll be cool if we had like a bigger number right here, and then like it's a bigger number counting up or down, and we can just do that to highlight it. And we'll go over our font size, and let's do like a 28. Let's see how that looks. Pretty nice. Okay, we'll pull it right here. There we go. And that is pretty close to the middle. Not exactly. Let's go back to our guides and grids. And then guides and grids, which is right there. I should have this memorized by now. Let's go back to 8. Awesome. There we go. And this number, you know, these numbers might change. We'll put them in maybe later. And I'm always punching Alt, looking at the overall design, just saying what can be modified, what do we see that's going on here. Cool. So it looks pretty nice. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull these back now. And obviously, guys, if you're a great designer, you might not need to watch this, especially if you're great with Illustrator. You don't have to sit through this whole process of a complete buffoon trying to operate Illustrator. But if not, this will kind of help you out in the beginning. I wish this video was out here when I first started doing this UI stuff. So stay tuned. If not, if you already know this, you can skip through to After Effects where we animate it. So let's do this right here. Cool. And we got symmetry going on, kind of. Got some issues. And we're really just playing around, guys. We're just seeing, hey, this works. This doesn't work well. And let's just take this line. And it's great because we can literally just Control Z what we don't like. Oh, it's a pretty interesting concept, but not in love with it. So I do have some ideas that I want to do with this, what I want to do with the loading, what I want to do with these lines. Let's go ahead and implement those. And I'm just going to highlight this stuff, delete it. So I kind of have a general idea of what I want to see from this. And what I want is to define a square, but I want to use so there's this design / photography principle called implied lines, and that's kind of what I want to do here. I don't want to actually use lines. I want to imply that there is a square around these numbers, and these just don't want to snap to the correct proportion. So by using implied lines, it's really powerful because first off, it kind of saves us some clutter. If you add too many lines and too much stuff, you go overboard on your UI, it gets a little messy. And then if it's too messy, it's just going to look bad. It's better to have a minimalist UI than one that has all this crazy stuff going on. Especially, I see a lot of people do this in the beginning, is they just go crazy trying to make like the most complex, most intricate thing. And it really, what ends up happening, guys, is after a couple days of working on it, you take a break and then you come back and you go, what was I thinking? This would never function. a civilization, a character would never actually interact with something this poorly. So yeah, it kind of leads back to story. Story is very important. Cool. Okay, so we have this, what we're doing here is we have this kind of offset. We'll pull this back to make it even, and then we'll just delete these. So we have this kind of offset thing right here going on. So we have one right here, one space, and then let me just grab the P tool. That will grab our pin, and punching Alt, kind of just bending it around. We can kind of see 1, 2 space. So we have that right there. Whoops. So we kind of see, okay, we got 3 spaces actually right here, and then there, and then here we have 1, 2, 3. Perfect. So yeah, we are actually even and symmetrical. Sometimes I like to just draw some lines around to kind of make sure everything's lining up, but also it can kind of provide some design inspiration as well. So that serves like a multi-purpose. So now that we've started the full design, the full structure that we're doing, it's going to be really important, guys, that you layer this. So we'll call this dots or boxes. And I'm going to say dots, even though that's the incorrect term. This is really, if you're just working with yourself, you can kind of make your own language and kind of just follow that, and that will be nice and helpful. If working with other people, you need to kind of stick to a standard, but if it's just yourself, you can call whatever you want as long as you know what it is. So let's go ahead and grab another box tool, and this time let's give it a stroke or a fill, and we're just going to give it a black fill, and it always does that. Let's go down, give it a black fill. So we talked a little bit about implied lines. Maybe what we'll have is this right here, and then this will go like that. And okay, cool. And then maybe since we have one right here, we can put one right there like that. And let's just kind of move this around and see what we like about it. Okay, and then let's put some filled. Let's put some filled over here. And guys, we're still very much in the experimenting process. I think that process really never ends until you finally turn in your product. So if you don't like to mess around with stuff, then this might not be the best place for you, unless you really just have an amazing design right off the bat. So I'm looking at this, and I think that what's happening is this is just too heavy. Yeah, it's pulling too much attention. And I'm going to go here, highlight these boxes, and I'm going to go over to stroke and change that just to 0. So that's going to make them stay respective in their little grid, which is kind of just, personally, I like that look for this project right here. So that's what we're going to be doing. And then just make some more of these. And remember, guys, you know, nothing's really just like, nothing's set in stone. Don't be crazy. Don't be like doing too much counting and thinking too much about symmetry. Just kind of put it there, and if it fits, it will be there in your final product, because you're going to be experimenting with everything. So let's just go ahead and punch Alt, and you can make that a circle. Okay, so let's kind of elaborate on what's going on here. And I'm going to take this, make it smaller. I think that's too much. Wait. Control C, Control V, punching R to rotate, holding down Alt. Whoops. Holding down Shift, and then punching, let's go back to our selection tool. So let's punch V. Very much a noob here, guys, but I kind of got the key commands down as far as I need them to be, to just operate. Let's see, something like that might work. And then let's Control C, Control V, Punching R again. Holding down Shift. And yeah. Punching V. Controls. Maybe let's try Alt. Come on. It's not going to work this time. Yeah, and I don't know why they're red. Oh, it's because their thing is red. Whoops. Alright, so what we're kind of doing here, guys, is we've created a little bit of our mess layer-wise, so we're going to fix that up as soon as I get these over and moved. Cool. Okay, I like that a lot. Looks interesting. It's a little bit busy, but it's not too bad. It's something we can work with. And this would be kind of right here for now. And let's kind of just clean stuff up. So we have our rectangles up here. We really what we're going to do is just shift. Okay, so yeah. Clean up a lot of things. We got a lot of cleaning up to do. You know what though? I'm okay with all of that being animated together. Actually, I actually like the idea. It'll save us a little bit of time. So we have this on an animation layer, this on an animation layer. Cool, I like that. Let's go ahead and just throw in something like this. Let's start giving this some form. And cancel. So what I kind of have in mind is like some kind of information being fed to it a little bit. So that would imply some lines, or even being fed out of it. So that would imply some lines here, kind of just moving out. So let's grab a weight of 3. Let's try that. That looks pretty nice. And then what we can do is just by shift clicking, we can kind of see what it would look like. So this would actually feed right there. If that's the case, then this should kind of go like this. And again, this is not our final design. We're just playing around here. This is the very center. So we can move these up a little bit. As far as I can tell, let's see. Got 2 like that, 2 like that. So this is the very center right here. And what we can do is maybe try something like this. And part of the problem is it's not exactly perfect. Yeah, we'll take that back out and just kind of move it back. Nice. So we have this cool shape. I've added a little bit more to it, and I kind of just gotten to this point where I was thinking I should kind of just share with you this fun little trick. So we want to have this loading circle in the middle, and this is a very common thing, and it's really easy to animate After Effects. Just make sure it's on a separate circle layer. It's going to save you a bunch of time, guys. I can't stress the layer thing enough. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create our own brush, which is going to be really fun. I love doing this. This will lead to some really cool results. So let's just grab a rectangle tool, and let's kind of just think about, actually, instead of doing a rectangle tool, let's kind of think about what we want coming from here. And we can kind of just sketch out. So maybe we have like this idea of like some spindles coming off. Could be like this maybe. And I like that. We can see, we can kind of mess around over here. Whoops. Make sure it's perpendicular. With some thicker strokes, possibly. And let's see. How do I feel about this random pattern? Not liking as much. I think I'll stick with the organized one. So just Control-Zing that. And that was just kind of me sketching real quick in my mind just to see maybe what I want. And also I like sketching because you always make mistakes when you sketch, but sometimes it leads to some really beautiful mistakes. So And that's something to consider. That's another reason to sketch. And let's just slide this out some. And you can see, but there's some default brushes and stuff. But right now what we're going to do is just go here, and then let's just make something first, and then we can start changing things. How about that? Just go over here to 8 points, and let's do something like 2. Okay, I'm liking that. Remember, we're just working with the grid here, guys. And then that, it'll kind of loop itself around. Cool. So let's go ahead and do something a little advanced. Let's highlight this and go to brush, new brush. And then there's different types. I usually just use the pattern brush. I really haven't played with those yet. Maybe I should. If you know what they do, let me know in the comments. And then we get a little preview of what our pattern brush is going to do. And then we can kind of just, oh yeah, look, we can change these, because it was like, oh, we're going to do nothing when it turns, but we can maybe do something like that when it turns. Or I really like that. Let's do that. If this brush ever makes a 90-degree turn, it'll look cool. Cool. Now we have this amazing little thing. And what we're going to do is just go over here, and we're going to select this brush. And whoops, we were selecting on this. We don't want to be selected on that. What we want to do is make a shape first. Let's do a ellipse tool, punching shift, and then let's go over here and clicking this. And look at that right there. That is that would be so hard to draw and take so long, and we did it in just a couple of seconds. And just memorize that little pattern. And I can already tell you, what we're going to do is just copy this existing sphere, and let's just move it back, and punching shift, let's make it a little bit bigger. Very cool. Okay, I'm liking the look of that. And then we'll click it, and then we'll go from basic to that. And look right there. We could even make it a little bit bigger if we want by holding down shift. There we go. We have this cool function. And now we have this brush for this project that we can apply all over the place. So yeah, I wanted to share that with y'all as well, because that is a very useful kind of thing you can do to animate. So let's go ahead and let's prepare for export. And I have this text layer right here that I don't want inside the circle layer. And honestly, guys, these text layers usually end up disappearing for me. But I still want to keep it organized. Keep the project organized, because you never know when you'll come back to it. Cool. And I left myself room here for maybe a loading bar or something, and we'll make that After Effects. And then also just something like this. We can maybe mess with a loading bar up here. We could maybe do some glitches and stuff right here, or have some randomized text come up, which is really cool. I'll show y'all how to do all of that stuff in After Effects. But before we go to After Effects, let's just be clear on one thing. And I know I'm always saying this, guys, but really make sure everything's on the correct layer. So we have the circle here, the accent. We only have one accent bar, so let's see where the other ones are. They're all right there. So in this case, for this project, we don't really need an accent layer. We'll just delete it. Turn it off. And pull it to the bottom. Let's see. So we have our fills. Cool. Our dots. Nice. Our text. Loving it. So now that we have everything, what we're going to do is we're going to define a project file search path. So for me, I'm just going to be making a new folder. And what we'll call this is UI underscore test. Then we'll do file save as, desktop, and then we're going to find that path for what we want, UI test. Awesome. Okay, we got the UI test up. So this is going to be UI test 1_full. We're saving everything. Okay. And then we have full right here. So now that we have that, let's start saving out the separate parts. And we'll start with just the text. So file, save as, UI_test _1_text. There we go. Okay. I realized earlier that I was exporting those. You want to save those as Illustrator files. So guys, make sure when you're going from Illustrator to After Effects that they're Illustrator files. This is very crucial because of the nature of the workflow that we're about to do. So let's go ahead and punch new project and go to immediately file, save as, and then save this project into your in with your other projects. Make sure they're all in the same spot. This is for a lot of reasons. One is just it's great organization, but another reason is, and we're just going to call this HUD_test_1. There's a lot of reasons, guys, you're going to want to do this, but the most important one is you need to keep all your compositions and footages together, or else you can accidentally delete it if it's another folder, and then After Effects will just pop up, say, can't find this, we can't use it. So then you'll have to end up recreating it. So what I like to do, guys, is just go ahead and grab your Illustrator files right here. And what we'll do before we pull them in is I'll go over some settings. So make your composition. Guys, remember, this is important. You need to know your width and your height in their aspect ratio. There we go. Mine's already defaulted because I love this aspect ratio. So I use it almost for everything film related. And we're just going to punch OK, just like that. Great. We got it right here. We have a composition right here. We can open it up. We're in it. We have layers and footage right here. Effect controls right here, and you can also just, and I'm kind of just teaching this for no one that knows After Effects, but if you already know it, you kind of, this is basic stuff. You can switch panels, go to color, go to animation, go to text, which is a nice one when we start working with text. Let's go back to default. Cool, we're in default. Let's go ahead and take our Illustrator files, pull them over right here. Awesome. So now that we see nothing happened, and that's because we haven't pulled them into our comp. We pulled them into our project path, and then we're just gonna make a folder, call it, we'll call this 1. We'll call this the Illustrator 1, because these are our first Illustrator files. When you start working on bigger projects and stuff, you'll have multiple Illustrator iterations and stuff, so this is just good practice to have to kind of just keep your workspace organized, but also your flow of ideas organized, because we're transplanting our idea from Illustrator to After Effects. So it's really important that that's as smooth as possible. Okay, so let's go ahead and just click Shift on all these and pull them in right here. Now you can see we have everything. So we have, let's just go by punching this little I button right here, on and off, on and off. You can see everything just kind of popping up. And this is actually full right here. So this is gonna, if we turn all these off, we still have the full thing. So we can actually apply effects to our full project without having to make an adjustment layer, which is nice. So we'll just turn full off for now. Text. Yeah, so y'all get the point. Real quick, I want to go over some things with y'all. Go to Edit, Preferences, and this will save you a lot of headache. This actually happened to me before. Because I just moved computers, I forgot to change this. So set a save time. It's going to default 20. If that's what you want, that's totally fine. For me, I'm making a lot of iterations really quick. I'm moving fast through the pipeline. I'm not going to do that for y'all right here just because we want to keep it simple and basic, but I'll make 20 to 30 changes every 3 or so minutes, and I don't want to have to backtrack that. And After Effects will crash. It's not if it's going to crash, it's when it's going to crash. I just want to talk about a little bit, so I get sidetracked. I love computer stuff. Let's talk a little bit about what we're working with here. So you don't have to open this up if you don't want to, but it's kind of good to know these things. Let's go to View right here, and let's just go to, we're on CPU right now, change graph to overall utilization. So this will show your full processor load, and this is really nice when you're using programs to see maybe if this is a problem, or if maybe it's your GPU is too slow, or maybe your memory is getting maxed out. So this is nice to see, so you know what kind of computer you need to upgrade to eventually, or if your system's fine, it's just the program's slow. Most of the time your system's fine, the program is just slow dealing with After Effects. So what we have right here is a 12-core processor, and I know this is off track a lot, guys, but I just want to explain this to you because you're going to be wondering why it's so slow. We want to change graph to logical processors. So we have 12 cores in this processor right here, and you can see they're all they're pretty low down right now. If we were to punch play, you'd only see one of these cores at a time lighting up, and I'm just gonna pull this off to the side, punch play right here, and you can see this one spikes up right here, so it means that After Effects is running on this core right here. And now, oh, this one's spiking up. It's jumping over to this core. So you can see that After Effects is only going to run on one of your cores. And let's just pull in some kind of effects up here. And let's just pull in like a VR glitch, which we'll be using a lot. But, and just search glitch. Whoops. And just search down VR digital glitch, and let's throw that on just our UI full. We'll make that visible again. Cool. So you see this green stuff? You see how that all disappeared? That was saved into your memory RAM. So while I was talking, After Effects was go ahead and being proactive, and you can see right there the spike that it used, and it was saying, okay, I'm gonna start rendering this out while they're not doing anything, so that way, since I'm only allowed to use one core, I'll be using that other core for other tasks when they're punching play. So now you can see it's a lot, first off, less smooth, and now we're getting a little bit more utilization, but usually it's just one core at a time, and they kind of just jump around. Look, this core got it right here, this core got it right here. So you can kind of just see, I just want to explain that real quick, and you notice I have 128 gig. Look at this. As it loads into our memory, it's going to be eating up our RAM like crazy fast, and part of that's because we're at full right here. We're going to go down to smaller one later, and you can see our memory is just getting ate up fast. So honestly, you're going to want, when you start doing this kind of stuff, especially if you're doing it for film, you want at least 128 gigs of RAM, which sounds insane, and I know it's insane, but it's just how After Effects works. So and if you're just doing it for fun, I mean, 32 is probably will get you by, but if you're on a professional production pipeline, you're going to have to iterate super fast, and you're not going to have time for stuff to get pulled out of memory compression. So yeah, that was just a quick demonstration. Got a little technical there, I know, about computer nerd stuff, but I love that, and I just want to explain that to y'all because we'll see this system bog down. So first thing, let's go to half right here, and we can see our little UI right there, and then we have all of our different things. So there's a lot of things we can do. First, let's take it very simple, and I'm gonna go to full just for the fact of keeping this resolution sharp. What we want to do is, we can't really do a bunch of our effects until we convert this to a shape layer. So you see these shapes up here? We're going to convert this from Illustrator file to shape layer. Adobe has its own shape layers. You can do strokes and fills on them. It's really great. So click right here, and you see left clicking, you get all of these settings. You get camera, pre-compose, which it comes in. Pre-compose is really nice. You can group things together. Keyframe assistance, track and stabilize, all these different things. Really what you want to do is just go over here, and then we're going to go to create, create shapes from vector layer, because this is vector art, and After Effects doesn't really understand that. It's not an Illustrator, so we're going to say, okay, turn into shape. Notice here we got our splines and stuff going out, we have strokes and fills, and now we have this little star, and it made this layer invisible. So really we're just going to be working with the star layer for now on, and that's just saying, hey, I'm a shape. And look at this right here. See this, guys? This is why you want to, and I'm just going to shift click these, and then I'm going to do group shapes. So now, this is why you want to do everything separate, guys. Could you imagine having to scroll through all of this? If this, just this circle alone had over 46 shapes. A lot of my projects get up to like 10,000 shapes. So scrolling through 10,000 shapes just to get to like the circle, that's no fun. That is why it is important and crucial to do this. So now, and I just grouped these together just so we can move faster, because we already knew that this was going to be a group, right? So let's go to add, and then look at all this awesome stuff. Play around with this, guys. You'll get some really cool effects. But first, let's just do stroke. Cool. And then again, it's just going to default us to the bottom. Let's go up. And really what we can do is we can start shift clicking, turning on and off. Okay, so there's the spike right there. Okay, you got all these spikes, and then just shift clicking. And I'm just demonstrating this so you know. Okay, cool. So we got all the spikes. Let's do group shapes. So now if we go down, whoops, to the group, let's turn it back on. Just by scrolling, shifting, and then turning visible. We have our group 1, and then our stroke 1, and then our circle is right here, group 46. So let's take this group out by punching, and if we go right here, function enter, we can see we can rename this. So what group is this? These are our spikes. So function enter, spike, spikes, cool, and then function enter, circle. So okay, so now we added a stroke earlier, and if I pull this under our group, it says stroke 1. Let's go to, and let's just talk a little bit about stroke. So we have stroke width, opacity, all this other stuff. Cool, so I talked a little bit, and we have our group right here. I talked a little bit about just some effects and stuff that we can do. So go to add right here and just go to trim paths, and this is going to be one that comes in handy. So right now it's under all group 1, which is our whole circle, so it's going to modify everything. And let's talk a little bit about keyframing while we're doing this, and this is just super basic. So we have our start, our end, and our offset. Let's just keyframe our end, and let's change that to 0. Notice it is completely gone, which is fine. Let's go to, let's say, frame 12. And it's really important that you start working on a frame base here. Since we're working on 24 frames a second, frame 12 is going to be 1 second. And that's just something you're going to have to remember, because you're going to want to line your UI animations up. We're lining ours up every 12 frames. So look at this, guys. Just by changing the, and then let me just change this again, just by changing the offs, the end right here, look at that, we have this cool growing animation. Okay, and we have the keyframe button checked as keyframe. Now let's look at this, look at that right there, and that is just so simple to do. You just go and add it right there. It's super easy to do. It's not exactly smooth though. So this is where you want to left click right here on end and keyframe assistant. And I happen to know that this is F9. So I'm just gonna be doing that for most of the time. F9. And this is easy ease. So what that means is it kind of just smooths it out. And if you want to make it even smoother, go to graph editor and look at this. This is how we're moving. So let's pull these Beziers back a little bit, and a lot of films do this. There we go. Look at that. Super fast, and then kind of levels off. And that's because we're looking at the edit speed graph. There's edit values, edit all these. Edit speed is what we're at right now, just letting you know. That's why I like to work in. So yeah, there we go. Beautiful. So let's see that in context, everything. Cool. So this is something, guys, that I like to do. I always start off with, okay, so I noticed something right here. Our end value didn't go all the way up to 100. There we go. I always start off with the intro animation to everything. I don't start doing the effects and everything and the moving around while the actors are interacting. I always start with the intro, even if it's not going to be used, because then you have to go in and move all of your keyframes and offset that. Because like I said, the director, or maybe if it's for a personal project, whatever it's for, is going to come back and they might say, we like this shot, but actually we changed it to the actor is now walking up to it. So we need it to pop up on the screen. And you're like, I didn't animate that in, so I got to go and move all my keyframes now. So yeah, I always like to start off with a little intro. There we go. Look at that. I could watch this all day. It's beautiful. Okay, let's zoom out a little bit and let's start messing with these other things. So we did our circle, which is right here. And I'm just going to delete that layer now, the Illustrator layer. And remember, convert to create shapes from vector layer. Go ahead and delete that old one. And let's just isolate it to see what we're working with. Okay, cool. So I'm going to move a little bit faster here. Go to contents, and we have all of our groups. Let's just go here, select it. Group shapes, cool, and then go here, add, and then we're going to pull that out of our group shapes because we want to affect the whole group. Here we go. And then rectangle pass, we can do, whoops, I didn't pull it all the way out, which is actually kind of fine. Let's see, let's go back to trim paths, my bad. And we're actually going to leave it here. And I guess this is a good teachable moment right here. Cool. Trim paths, there we go. Let's look at some of this. Because we have it in under all of these shapes, it knows that there's shapes there. So what we can do is do individual. And what that's going to do, if we click individual, we'll click a start. Well, we want to end with nothing. We want to start with nothing, so we want to turn end to 0. Keyframe that, and remember our other keyframe was at 12, so we'll see what that looks like. Cool. So now we have, yeah, look at that, amazing. And let's just turn our other one back on. Look at that. So looks nice, but there's still some stuff we can do. And you want to go back to our group, and then I realize that this is probably getting a little straining on y'all's eyes, so I'm gonna just create a new, and it's kind of getting straining on mine too. So what I like to do is go to new, and then let's go to solid right here. And you can see kind of how I work. I just am all over the place. There we go. And you can always invert these colors if you want, just by, and we'll get into that, but it's going to be a tint up there. And then you're going to map the white to black and map the black to white. That's usually how I do it. And then you can also map them to different colors and get some cool looks. Awesome. So let's go down a little bit again. Let's go to our group 1. And then, okay, remember guys, we want to just go ahead and do easy ease with this, and keyframe assistant, easy ease. But remember, F9, and look, they changed, so now we easy ease these. Beautiful. You can also go in and modify the curve. I'm not going to get into that because I already showed y'all it. So now we have there, look at that, amazing. Okay, so now we got all of these going on. So let's we can play around a little with this. Let's convert to shape layer. Create shape from vector layer. We're really not converting, we're creating. My bad, guys. And then let's go to contents, and then let's add in a couple things. So let's just mess around. let's do, we always want to do this trim path. I like that. What else can I show y'all? We could do around corners just so y'all can see that. And then let's go ahead and animate the trim path. Oh wait, so the other one was that we have all these things coming in at 12, which is nice. But maybe we want something to last, it'll take a little bit longer to hold the audience's interest, just to keep the motion flowing. So what we can do here is we can actually, we'll do some stuff with the trim path first. So we'll create the end keyframe, go here, pull it up, then punch F9. There you go. So now we have this. And then we want to change that from simultaneous to individual. Look at that right there. Cool. And then after that, let's go over to round corners. And let's go to frame 12. And then we'll keyframe the radius. And go to frame 24 or 1 second. And change that down. And then punch F9. With both of them selected. And then look at that right there. And what we can actually do is kind of just pull this back and have it go throughout the whole animation. So that's kind of interesting. We might want to change this up a lot more. There we go. And this is not exactly the best use of that. I mean, it's kind of cool, but think about it. The actor taps on something, the shape, instead of like having create a new shape, maybe it morphs the shape, and you can use that by using that feature. So that's very cool. Loving it. And then let's just go here. And this is our text layer, which when we convert to shape layer, nothing will happen. So we'll talk a little bit about text now. So let's start with the text. We have our text layer right here. And let's go ahead and just create. And this is important too. If you're working with other people for a client, you want to make sure that you send them your font. So we're using Blender Pro. It already knows that because I love that font. And let's just type in 00. Cool. And then we'll make it smaller. And let's go to, we're working with text, so let's go to our text panel. And you can see all of that right here. And then just slide your text around. I do notice After Effects likes to crash with text for some reason. So yeah, keep that in mind when you're working with it. And we're just going to copy this text layer, pull it down here, and give it just 1 digit. Cool. And then we have some text up here. And then we have some text right here. And I'm really not going to get into those because just for this tutorial will be so long if we have that, if we do it for every single layer. But I will get into the basics that you need. So let's go ahead and turn off this text layer. So now we can see our text right here, which is awesome. But you notice it's just text, guys. Nothing's going on here. So what we can do is let's just center it up. And then there's a cool effect over here. And you're going to see yourself implementing this a lot, and that is going to be your slider control. And let's just do this right here. Slider control, drop it onto your text. There we go. And let's punch play and you'll see, okay, nothing's happening. That's kind of the point because we haven't said, told anything to happen. So we're going to take our source text and we want to pick whip it to our slider. And then look at that. Our slider's at 0, so our source text is at 0. Then we want to keyframe our slider from there to, let's say, here. And look at that. Now let's punch play. Okay, so this does happen, but that's okay. I'm glad that happened. Sometimes this doesn't always happen. Sometimes for some reason it just decides to work properly. So we'll get into how to fix that, and don't be afraid, but we're going to be using a little bit of coding to fix this. Okay guys, so we have our slider, but we have these crazy decimals coming up, and you notice I don't have that now. So what you want to do is punch Control Alt, click right there, and then you're going to have this text come up. And what you're going to do is just type dot value, because we're defining the value of the slider, and then dot to fixed. So what we're saying is, okay, we want to fix this value to 2 decimal places and assign an integer. We're going to be using 2 for this. And now, there you go. So now that we have this how we want it, let's go over to this right here, this keyframe, and we want to go to 100 because we're working out of 100 now. So now if you notice, there we go. And this is going to make us resize our text just a bit. So just by clicking the text, we're able to change the side, and now we have a little counter in the position. Let's just move it down some. And since you've already made it, you've done all the coding, you've done everything for it. Control C, Control V. Punch P again for position. And there we go. Then Control C, Control V. Punch P again for position. And then punch S for scale. And now look at that. And of course our language has changed a little bit. But yeah, look at that. Our design language changed slightly, but it's still pretty cool. The only problem is, hey, nothing's happening with this text. It's just showing up. So let's just create a new layer by pre-composing it. And now it's all grouped together. So what happens to one is going to happen to all of them. And we can just do an O, a T for opacity. And let's just keyframe that from, let's say 0 over to 100. There we go. So cool, we got this counter, we got it going, we have some moving and stuff, but it's really just, it's not evolving, and that's where these glitches and stuff are going to come in. So first thing I want to do is I just want to delete this and create a new solid, because we're going to start giving this a language of color. Then let's do something like this, maybe. So now we have this like orangey look, and this is not exactly the color I want. So I'm just creating another solid. And then if you have a colorist on the project or something, you kind of just pick from the color palette. Maybe something more like that. Awesome, I'm liking that a little bit more. And we can always remap and tint stuff, so keep that in mind. That's actually probably the best way to do this color thing, because you'll be able to change it the fastest, is just to tint it a color. And then, okay, so if we just get an off view, just click fit right here. Cool, so let's watch what we have. Nice. But like I said, we don't have all this, we don't have any evolutions or anything going on, and we really want to add those in. So let's go back to our default layout, and let's go over to effects. And then I talked a little bit about, I'll touch upon some. So let's do a glitch effect. And then this is gonna be on our outline. So look at that. Looks kind of gross, but also kind of cool. It's not exactly what we're looking for though, is it? So let's change our master amplitude down, and then let's go to distortion, color distortion. We turn that up a little bit. Nothing's happening, it's okay. Geometric distortion, and then look at this, distortion, evolution. So let's just click here, click a keyframe, click here, spin it about, and then let's watch it now. So now it kind of looks a little alive, which is cool. And we're able to affect these layers separately because of how we're doing this. So now another one that's good is really, guys, if you just go under here, and I'm still learning a lot about the effects in After Effects, and just go to Distort, you can see a lot of different ones here. There's mesh warp, reshape, roll, smear, twirl, warp, turbulent displace, which is pretty cool, blend. There's so many different ones that you can mess with, so I kind of encourage you to just mess around with those. But let's do a turbulent displace on top of this. So what we want to do is change the size way down, and then change the amount. And we can also change this to twist or turbulent smoother, and then give it a little evolution. And then we might want to change that amount up a little bit. Cool. And nothing's happening. So let's click the keyframe, spin it around, and oh, that keyframe didn't stick quite. So let's do it again. There we go. There we go. So now we have this moving thing, and I actually don't really like this effect for this. So that's something that you just kind of want to move along with. If you don't like it, just take it off and try something else. And let's talk a little bit about Tint real quick. Tint, and then let's grab it right here, and then let's drag it onto our background. So look at this, we're mapping black to black, and we're mapping white to white. And this is the best example because of this was never white or black. So what we'll do, that's my bad, I usually just work with a white or background, is we'll undo this tint effect, delete it, and then let's throw it on something that actually has a white or black value, which are these right here. So we can map our black to white, and look at that. Of course, I don't want to do that. Well, if we wanted to do another color, look at that. We're just mapping all of these around. So there we go. That kind of concludes the After Effects portion. And I'm going to end it with opening up a project of my own just to kind of show y'all where I'm at with it and what's going on. So I'm just going to go ahead and punch save, and we'll open that up. Okay guys, here's our project. I loaded it in the RAM to you, and this is an incomplete project, but nevertheless, it's still very useful to kind of just break some stuff down and kind of walk y'all through what's going on here, because it can be a little complicated, especially in the very beginning. So the first thing, just letting y'all know, I have my guides on. We can turn those off if we want. Proportional grid, and we can just see what's happening here. So we'll punch play. Cool. So you can kind of see it's loading everything in. First thing I want to say is these brains right here, they are EXR sequences, and I created them in Cinema 4D, which we'll get into using Cinema 4D to kind of expand upon your current animations and design. And they're multi-passes that I made in Redshift. So we have this base layer, but we also have an atom array on top, which is kind of giving it that cool look. And then I split them apart. And yeah, and also I want to make this the first lesson, is make sure to play with blending modes, because you can get some cool stuff popping up. So let's just start off with the first effect, and I'm going to change this to half because first off, it's going to take a while to load if I change it to full. So okay, we're at half resolution right now, and our first effect is this overall glitch, and it depends on what your client or you are looking for. Without it, here you go. So without it, it just feels a little dull. There's not a lot of color, and then with it, kind of just brings it all together because it's at the very top, pulling all the layers together. So you can add some imperfections, some grain, some glitches to kind of just bring your footage together. If we go to effect controls, we have a VR digital glitch with the distortion evolution keyframed over time. So that's our first effect. And then we have different layers of HUD. So we have a shape layer right here, which you can't see currently. And then we have pre-composed right here. These are just counting. Remember the counting thing we did the numbers? That's all that those are. Same thing up here where it says subject 7. And then I believe this is the big one. Yeah, this is the big HUD with everything. So I designed this in Illustrator, like with everything. And we can just open it up. I can show you kind of what's going on under the hood here. So first off, you'll notice a bunch of keyframes. And I really didn't make separate groups for this, so I had to make them inside. So we have small boxes right here, which are right there. You see them popping on and off. Big boxes right here. And then, well, I guess you can kind of just see everything kind of tells itself, tells its own story. And you can see just like what we're doing is just changing the stroke right here. Scroll down, trim pass. And then we have it starting in keyframed animation. And it just gives us that really cool look right there. And that's just for the circle. And it's really the same story with all those. Maybe some other effects are on them as well. I can't quite remember at this point. But that's really just the intro effect that's going on over them. So yeah, that's what we have for that. And then we'll go down a little bit. And I'm not sure if I applied, so no effects are on this yet, and I'm gonna add some stuff, and you can kind of just see, let me click off of everything. You can kind of just watch how everything moves. This took a while to design, just everything slowly coming in. The most important thing is that the keyframes are lined up everywhere. Because of that, that's gonna allow me to kind of make sure when I start animating that if the keyframes are lined up, everything kind of is moving together, so it all seems like it's part of the same system. And when we go to contents, you can really just see right here. Some of them are a little off, which is fine, but most of them are lined up perfectly, and that's going to make it feel very much like it's the same thing. So there we go. And then what I did with the brains is the same thing. Keyframe the movement of them. It's under transform. So here's position 1. Position 2, there's a keyframe. Position 3, you can see they start to separate. This is really just the same value twice, just so I could define a start and end point for this area. And then position 4, and then right now, nothing else. They just spinning. And if you notice, I don't have the rotation keyframe. That's because these are three-dimensional objects that I already knew I wanted to be spinning. So what I did was I did that inside Cinema 4D, and we'll break down some stuff in Cinema 4D now, so you can kind of add in your own stuff. And if you've never used Cinema 4D before, or you're scared of 3D, don't worry. I'll walk you through the whole process. And if you don't have Cinema 4D and you're a student, there's a free educational license. Also, you can use a program like Blender. The same design and animation principles will apply. So we'll jump into that. Okay, so we're going to be using Cinema 4D, and I just want to go over some basics for y'all and kind of just get y'all up and running if you're new to it. And if not, you might learn some new stuff here and some kind of cool tricks and tips. So if you want to stick around for that, you can. If you want to move on, that's cool too. So let's first start off by merging in a 3D object. And if you go to File, Merge, and then search, you might have an assets folder of 3D objects. If not, there's some great websites like TurboSquid and CG Trader, and they have some really awesome free 3D assets. And I will say that this brain was free, so that is a plus. It's going to automatically import it really tiny. So scale it up. Cool. So you can see it looks pretty familiar. We have a little brain, and I like to use a render engine called Redshift, and this is definitely not necessary, guys. It's faster and rendering, and it's nice because it doesn't tie up your CPU. So while I'm rendering on my GPU, I go over to After Effects and do a little bit of work. But right now, it's really not, if you're just getting started, it's not a big deal to have a render engine. Especially if you're not going for hyper realistic looks. Like, we're not going for anything that's crazy. So the first thing we're going to do, guys, is we're going to create an atom array, and automatically you might want to change these values depending on how big your model is. I think I'm good. So I'm going to take this brain and drop it under the atom array. And okay, so yeah, the radiuses are a little too big, so we'll do 0.5 and 0.5. And then 0.5. Cool. So now we have this really awesome looking effect. And if we want to make the spheres bigger, we can do something like 1 and then do like a 0.3. And you can see it's kind of changing how they look. We can go a little bit smaller with this, maybe like a 0.5. And yeah, we have this really cool grid array like this. And then we'll just zoom in some. And you can see we're already just setting up a camera angle. If we punch play, nothing's going to happen. So what we need to do is, first off, punch Control D. Make sure that we're at 24 FPS or whatever our project time is. And now we have this proper timeline. And then let's do 120 frames. That's usually a good amount. So here's the thing, to save render time and just to save storage, because these files can get hefty, I like to just do 120 frames and have a complete animation that I can loop over and over again instead of After Effects. Cool, so let's go to the atom array, go to coordinates, and on the rotation, just create a keyframe. Okay, we're at frame 0, and then right here, we'll spin it around 360 degrees, so we'll type that in. And there we are, back at our starting position. So now when we punch play, I'll turn off the render engine. You can see we have a spin, but it's eased already, and we actually don't want this to be eased. Depending on your project, you might want it to be eased, but for me, since I'm going to be looping this over and over again, I don't want this to be eased because I want to have seamless transitions between frame 120 and frame 0. So I'm going to highlight these and just click this. And I got to that by left clicking on this is saying animation show F curve. Sorry guys, I forgot to mention that. And yeah, now we have this cool thing. So really guys, your color is not going to matter, because you can, like I said, you can go back into After Effects and remap these colors to different values. So you can remap a gray to a blue or a blue to a gray. If you want to create a material, you can go create Redshift material and then just drop it on your atom array. And it's going to update. And then we're going to just create a redshift, and let's do a dome light. Cool. So now we have a little bit of a specular material. Very cool. And then let's say that we were ready to export this. Punch play. Awesome. Seamless and looping. Cool. And you can also grab different angles, make different cameras, so you can have different angles of the brain moving around. This wasn't a lot of work, so it's not a big deal to gather all your different angles. You can always come back and just re-render an angle if you liked it. But let's say we're happy with this angle right here. And the big thing is you want to make sure nothing clips with your bounding box, which right now we're going to just say we want a 1080 by 1080. So that's going to be 1080 pixels by 1080 pixels. We don't want it to actually be our composition size because it doesn't need to be, because we're just going to be fitting this in as part of the UI. It's not going to be the whole UI itself. So for me, this resolution is good enough. We're going to make sure that frame rate is 24 as always. And then we're going to go to the Redshift Render. And if you're using physical or standard, you can just use those. I've actually never used them other than just doing something quick, so I couldn't really tell you the render settings you would want for physical and standard on this. I do know Redshift pretty well though, so I will guide y'all through that if you're using this engine, or if you're using Octane. Similar settings will apply as far as you'll know what to do with the sample rates. So samples max, we're gonna keep it 16. Sample overrides, let's go here. And then we'll do something like, we can take up our ambient occlusion, take up our light. I'm being really sloppy with how I'm doing this. And then just for safety, we'll go to 32. Optimizations, GI, I actually don't care about GI because this is just a mesh object and there's no special lighting. We're using a dome lighting, so it doesn't really matter that much to me. If you want to go crazy, you can get some GI going on. It'd probably start lighting up the inside a little bit more and everything. But something to remember is, and this is going to be our final output, is you're going to want to check under here. You're going to want to have selected alpha channel, and that's going to allow this background to be transparent, so when you're comping in After Effects, you won't have to screen anything out or anything. You can still have full freedom over the solids blending layer. So just like that, I always love to work with EXRs, and that's because they store a lot of data, so we can always push around the color, and they are super nice to work with inside of After Effects now, so that's a big bonus. And then just save your file location, set your frame range, so we're going to go from 0 to 120, and there you go. You'll have this looping animation just like that. And this was a quick thing in 3D. You can also do some stuff with cubes. You can even animate these and have them do their own thing. So like if you wanted to, you could do something like this and then have this open and close and have an animation for that and make that part of your UI. So yeah, it's a quick 3D thing. If you're new to Cinema 4D, I have a bunch of videos over it. Super amazing, super powerful tool, and really diverse in what you can do with it. So yeah, that concludes the 3D part. So just jump in, get a free 3D model and throw it into your UI, and it will do so much to make it look more realistic and advanced, and make you grow as an artist as well. So there we go, guys. Okay, so I was originally going to make this another video, but I thought that just brushing over it, and by the way guys, we'll go real advanced into this in the future, so subscribe if you want to see that, but I just wanted to quickly show y'all how much power you have in Cinema 4D and what you can really do with just a couple of things. So let's punch play, and this is no keyframes, by the way guys. So we have this really advanced evolving object, which is really cool, and it's looping. It looks like it jumps a little bit, but it's kind of it's fine for the purpose for what we're doing. You can always just, if you want to, let's say, do like 500 frames if you really want it to be seamless, and then punch play. Anyway, see. So now we have all these frames. So what do we have going on here? Well, we're using a time effector, a cloner, a cube, and a cube, and then a platonic. And that's it, guys. So I'll build something like this for y'all real quick, and you can go so advanced with this. So let me just go ahead and hide what we have going on right now. And this is where using render engines comes in great, because you can always just offload the geometry to the render engine, because they can handle way more geometry than just Cinema 4D can. So that's one reason I like using render engines for this kind of stuff. So if you're going to be doing a lot, you might just want to pick one up. Because you can see it's going to start getting slow once we start adding some stuff in. So let's just start off with the cloner. Let's immediately grab, let's see, we can do a cube. Let's drop the cube in under the cloner, and we're going to go from linear to radial. And now we're going to change the count up and the radius up. And look at that. We can even, if you want to, you can animate or keyframe this count to go from like 0 to a lot more. But we'll do something like this, and then let's go to the cube right here, and let's take this size down to like 10 and 10. So 10 across the board. Or if we want to, we can just leave it like that, because I kind of like that. So nothing's happening, because that's why this is why we need this time effector. So it's off to the side right here. You can't really see it, but by punching Shift C, you get a little search bar come up. And then I'm just going to search time over here. It's on the other window, but nevertheless it's there. So it just popped in right there. And then take the cloner, drag it under there, and then let's punch play. Nothing's going to happen. We're going to switch this parameter, the deformer, onto object, and then we'll give it a play again. Make sure that we, And there's one last thing you want to do. Go over to the cloner and just drag that under your effectors. And now when we punch play, we have this cool little animation, and we can kind of change how it looks by messing around with our time. And then right now we're on rotation, so let's just take these to 0 and 0. And now we just have this. We can turn that off, and let's say that looks pretty cool right there. And we can set this to 360, so it will do a full rotation within our sequence. A little too high. So something like that looks pretty nice. You can also change the scale, which will get a little weird. But kind of cool. Getting some really interesting geometry. And this is really just opening the doors for stuff that we can't really do. Look at that shape right there. We can't really do stuff like this in Cinema 4D, and that's just amazing. Yeah, that's something I really like right there. That's super cool. There's different other things we can do. The position, which it'll slowly just move over, which I don't like to keep frame positions inside of Cinema 4D because I don't really know what this is relative to everything else UI wise. So I just kind of keep this the same. And let's go back to 120 frames. So there we go. We can also, let's add in another object. Let's add in a platonic. I like to use them as well. Drop it under there. And just like that. We can also do some other things, like if we go to the platonic, we can change the radius of it. So now you have this really interesting 3D shape. It's getting a little crazy though, so we'll take it down some. You can change the segments, you can change what it is. So now we have this diamond shape. I like the Terra. That looks pretty cool too. Hexa, octa, dodeca, and then Bucky. I never used that one. That looks cool. I'll keep keep this one right here. Oh, it looks pretty nice. Okay, so we have this, and then where you can really get some really crazy effects if we wanted to go for it is, let's take this. I'm gonna go to the time effect here. I'm just gonna turn off position and scale. So now we just have this right now, which is kind of boring, but we're about to make some cool stuff, so that's okay. So let's take this and let's do a torus and drop it under our cloner. So now we have these multiple objects right here, and we can just change the count. So right now we're on linear. So yeah, look at that. Pretty crazy. Let's go back to radial though, and then change the radius. Now that's interesting right there. Let's go to the timer and let's just change this up to 120 degrees. And then let's try, I'm just trying to find a nice place where it will loop seamless. And then let's try 100. Maybe that will work better. Pretty close right there. These kind of look like donuts, so we can again change this. Let's check the ring radius, turn that up. And yeah, now we have this cool effect going on, and then we can go back and we can go up here and just mess with scale again and see what we get. Yeah, so really nice looping effect, and I'll show you all the other one too, so you can just see it. And I'll turn off this top one again. So yeah, just this crazy effect, and that's just done with this timer, messing with the rotation, adding a cloner, cloning 2 cubes. I'll turn them off, and then adding a cloner at the top of that, and adding a platonic. And then if we want to add some more here, let's just go ahead and add another. Let's add some spheres. And let's add another cloner. Drop the spheres under that cloner, drag that cloner here, and I can't, okay, I can see them right there. Let's take this cloner's coordinates, and I think since we're parented, Yeah, since we're parented to another cloner, we're not going to be able to move it, but we can still kind of mess around with the objects. So here we go. Yeah, so this is getting some crazy effects right here. So let's change the count up more, and then change the Y down a little bit. And then let's take the radius of this. Yeah, so this is something that you really can't do in After Effects, that you're really opening up. Let's take the radius of the sphere and change that down a bunch. So now we have this crazy animation. The only problem is we're clipping around the edges. So let's go back to this cloner and let's turn down the Y. Now look at that. It's crazy. It's kind of just shooting out. We can make the animation longer if we want to. I really like this. It might add a little bit of detail to our scene, and we're getting close. We're getting to a pretty close point where we'd want to keep it. So let's change this animation rate to like 500 frames. Since I have a clear vision of where I want this to be, I can kind of just take it, and then I'm going to create a null. So Shift C, guys, and just create a null object. And then drop, we'll delete our old one that was just showing some stuff to y'all. Drop that under our null, and you can do a lot of things. So let's just keyframe the scale of this null in. So we're going to start at 0, and then we're going to do 0 here, 0 here, 0 here, add keyframes. And then let's go to 48. Then let's do 1, 1, 1, and then add keyframes. There we go. Now we have this really beautiful thing. It comes in, it does this little thing. And if we want to make this seamless, let's go to frame, let's make this a little bit smaller. Let's do 180 frames. And then, whoops, not 1080, 180. And then let's just go here. So we did from this frame. Okay, so we did from 0 to 48, so that's 2 seconds, and that's 24. Okay, so 48, so we're going to go over here, and then this is going to be likewise pretty similar, so we have them right here lined up. Then we're going to go 2 more, and then 2 more. So I believe that is correct right there. So we're just going to keyframe it again, saying okay, set the key, then set the scale to 0, 0, 0. There we go. So now if we punch play, we have this really cool thing going on. And then it goes down, and then it opens back up. And just to show y'all, click animation, show F curves. We can see right here. And let's say that was a little too long to go up. So I'm going to take it and just drag it here to 24. And I'm going to take this one, drag it here, and let's go to 160. Can't really count backwards, but that's pretty close. So let's punch play and see how that looks. Start over. Nice. So the super dynamic object that's moving around like this. Cool. Okay, so we can maybe add on a little bit more to this. Let's go ahead and add a cube, and let's go ahead and add a cloner, and let's go ahead and add another Shift C time effector. And then we're going to drag this all under the time effector. And then we have our time right here. We want to make sure that we said, okay, time's affecting it. Cool. Let's drag this under our null. And then let's just go to our object mode and just clone up a lot. There we go. And then let's change it from linear to, let's do another radial, because that's kind of the theme with this one. And then increase the radius way too much. Okay, so we're at 1,000 right now. Let's go to something like 3,000. Now we have this. And let's go over to our time effector. And look, notice guys that since we dropped it under our null, it's all happening to everything, so we don't have to re-keyframe that, which is really nice. So let's go over to our object effector right here, and then let's increase the count a bit. And then there's different modes you can do, but we're going to leave it like this. You can notice we're starting to slow down because we're adding a lot of geometry in the scene. This is when I'm rendering currently in Redshift off the side right here. But this is when you would throw this into the Redshift render view and turn off the geometry in the scene by double clicking this top to turn it red. So, okay, we got our cloner, we got our cube. Let's play around with this. Let's make it smaller. And let's do something like 10 again. And then, cool, so we have these circles here. Let's go over to our time effector and let's go to parameters. We don't really care about that scale so much. We want to start rotating it around. So it's going to be this bottom one. And then, let's see, let's turn all these up. Okay, cool. So sometimes this happens. You want to always make sure on object, but I have a feeling, yeah. So this is not actually reacting how I thought it would, which is fine. Let's increase the count, something like that. And let's go ahead and take the cube again. And what we'll do is we'll drop another cloner, and we'll clone the cloner. We'll make this radial. There we go. Linear, I mean. And then increase the count. Starting to kill our geometry, starting to kill the scene. Okay, so if this happens, make sure we're at this cube, and okay, so we're at the lowest amount of segments here. So really what's happening now is if you're not using a GPU render engine, what you're going to want to do is just find a way to smartly decrease your scene geometry. And you can see right here, we've bogged it down. So we've gone a little too far with doing the cloner on the cloner. Let's go ahead and take this one out. And let's work from here and see what we got going on. Cool, so the render off this side actually finished. So this will be a perfect example for y'all. You can see right here, we see our geometry. Very nice. Let's go ahead and I'll start offloading some stuff to it so we can kind of just see what's going on. And this will start getting a little annoying. We want to just drop that redshift material onto our null, and now our stuff has material. Very cool. And then I'm going to pop this over here. You can also do displacements and subdivisions inside of Redshift. It's just really nice for getting geometry out of Cinema 4D to keep it as smooth as possible. Cinema 4D is great, but it's really only optimized for a couple of cores, so we're not really getting to see the full thing. Cool. Okay, so let's offload this cloner. Whoops, made it visible in the wrong view. We'll offload that cloner. And now we're getting a render, and it's still a little slow. So I'm gonna just take this, and now we can kind of see what's going on. Cool. So we have this really dynamic shape. It's looking cool. Let's add this cube in right here. And you can see them around the edges just very faintly. So I'm going to go ahead and change these to 30 or 20. 20, 20, 20. And because we offloaded that other geometry there, we're able to actually use this interface inside of Cinema 4D faster. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the cloner on top of the cloner again. And then I can see that this time effectors, parameters, let's reset those to 0, 0, 0. And then let's see what happens when we do this. And we're going to stop Redshift and just look over here. And then let's punch play. Okay, that's interesting. Let's increase the cube count. Nice. Got a cool look. So we're able to dev it right here. And then when we punch play over here, and Redshift is going to reload. And then let's pause the scene. We can see what it looks like with everything in context and not have to keep turning stuff on and off over here. So what we'll do is we'll do a cloner again. And this is getting a little bit like Cloneception. But actually what we can just do, and this might be simpler, is to take this ring. Okay, so it's that cloner right there. Let's see what happens here. It's always fun to experiment. Okay, so we're doing some crazy amount of cloning here. Let's do radial. And then let's change the radius up. So what's happening is this bogged down our geometry over here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off in our null as well. Whoops. Didn't mean to turn up the count. Let's do count like 3. And then we'll take the radius up a little bit more. And then let's go back. And we're not going to really be able to dev this out actually, because the Redshift Render viewer can't really keep up. And I don't think the Cinema 4D one, well, it's doing an okay job. We'll see how it goes. As long as it doesn't clip on the edges, we'll be fine. Pretty cool. There's a couple things I don't like. And that's that these spheres are all offsets. Let's see what the issue is here. Offset seed, let's change that. And let's make sure. Cool, okay. And then it goes back down. Nice. So now we have this really cool animation made very quickly, and I kind of went overboard with it just to show y'all the possibilities that you have. Just remember, guys, this is crucial. When you're saving, make sure that the alpha channel is checked right there. And I'm not even sure if I had that checked for my other renders. I hope I did. If not, I'll have to re-render them. But there, guys, that's pretty much it. And this is actually the end of the Cinema 4D part for sure this time. So, guys, yeah, make sure you got this going on, EXRs, saving in the right spot. And yeah, there you go.